Welcome to Starting Out, the show that takes you inside the exciting world of entrepreneurship and showcases the incredible journeys of new business owners and budding entrepreneurs. Join us as we explore the challenges they faced, the lessons they learned, and the triumphs they achieved. Get ready to embark on a thrilling adventure as we uncover the secrets of success on Starting Out.
My name is Francine, and today our guest will be none other than the founder of IndieSoup Media. That's right, we got Dr. Tachi in the house today, so I'm going to bring her right on in, and we're going to have a little conversation. Dr. Tachi, welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm so honored to be on Starting Out.
Yes, starting out, we talk a lot about how people got started because people need to understand the journey and get inspired from the journey, the ups, the downs, the detours, all of those things that go into making a company or a ministry or a business successful. So why did you start? Look, just tell us a bit about your background. Let's do that. How did you get started in media? Because you're known for media.
Yeah, so my nickname when I was little was TV Addict. If that doesn't give you an indication of why I'm in media, I don't know what does. I've gone through different thoughts of what I wanted to do, or had gone through different thoughts of what I wanted to do, when I got older. And I ended up here. So like I said, when I was little, we used to watch TV. My sister and I used to watch TV so much that both of us became called TV addicts. So I was like, well, whatever. Thank you for the honor. So I've always loved television. I've always loved the arts in terms of theater and film and dance. So I've loved anything that had a presentation or artistic aspect to it. And so when I was going to college, this was like 9th grade. I was a freshman in high school. And of course, African parents are always asking what it is that you're going to major in. Forget you just came out of 8th grade. So I was really interested in fashion design. And that's what I thought. My plan was to go to FIT in New York and to get into fashion design. Yeah, African parents have other plans for you. So my father was actually the one that said, well, because you like television and plays and acting, why don't you think about mass communication? I'm like, what's that? So when I did some research, I found out it's exactly everything I've been doing. Ended up majoring in mass comm 3 times. My doctorate is also in mass communication, general communication and mass communication. And so that's a little bit about my background.
Okay, yeah. So you came, go back a little further. How did you all end up here in the United States? Tell us the story.
Yeah, so interesting thing. My father came to this country, to Iowa first in the 1960s. So back when he was in Nigeria, he was a clerk at a shop. I think it was like a bookshop or like a copy shop. And this was like in the 60s. And there was a couple that were working on their PhD. Both of them were working on a PhD in anthropology and named the Hendersons. Hello to Professor Henderson if he's watching this. So the Hendersons were from Connecticut at the time. They were in Nigeria working on research, their anthropology research, because they were doing research on my ethnic group, Igbo people. And they happened to go in to get like some copies at the time. I guess it was like mimeograph machine, and started talking to my father and some of the people in the store. And my dad said, yeah, I'd really like to go and study in the US. And from there, that's how it happened. They would write to each other. He said, they were like, why don't you come to the US and study? So they helped in terms of the sponsorship, and he went to Iowa first, My dad got to Iowa in the middle of the winter with a suit coat because it's hot in Africa. He didn't know it was cold. So all he came with was a suit jacket. He said, I was so cold. I bet you were. So after that, Iowa, I can't remember the name of the school in Iowa, but it was a small Jesuit college, I believe. And he actually played soccer for them and a lot of other things. So, but he was not digging Iowa so much. So the Hendersons said, why don't you come to Connecticut? And he ended up going to college in Connecticut. And then from there, he finished and went there and then went to Michigan, University of Michigan. And that's actually where I was born. So my mother was in England going to school. So she was living in England and went to school, and they met through one of my mother's relatives. So she ended up coming to the US, to Michigan, and that's how they met. And this is the interesting thing. Years later, when I was in the doctoral program at Howard, I had a classmate, and we were in the same class, and I noticed she looked at me I was like, wait, what's wrong? And she said, is your mother's name Mary? I said, how do you know that? Turns out she went to school with my father all those years before. And it's because I look like my dad a little bit. And so and then the last name. So she figured, hey, I wonder if. So I ended up being in class with one of his classmates, which was so odd.
Wow. See, sometimes you don't know the origin stories. You know, the origin stories are famous now. You know, when movies are coming out, they're telling the origin stories. Like Wonka, I just watched. I was like, oh, this is the origin story for Willy Wonka. I had no clue. I just thought it was going to be the Wonka that I knew with Gene Wilder. No.
Completely different, huh?
Yes. I was like, oh, so, okay. So the origin story helps us to understand a little bit more. So thank you for sharing that. I had no idea.
Yeah.
So what was one of the biggest challenges you faced in getting started on your quest for media production? Because I know you are the founder of IndieSoup Media, mm-hmm. but before you did that, you were Mediascope, and prior to that, you were a professor.
Mm-hmm.
A professor. Tell us about your professorship.
Yeah, interesting. So, I always tell people that when people say I'm interested in working on a PhD or a doctorate, I'm like, before you register anywhere, please come and talk to me, because I have, insight that I want to impart to them as, when you're pursuing this type of advanced degree. First of all, why do you want to do it? Do you need it for what you want to do? Or is it that you want to be called Dr. Such and Such? Well, that's a very expensive way to get a title. There are cheaper ways. So I always tell people when they're considering to come and speak to me, because there are so many things that you don't know when you're trying to get into it. So I would say, come and speak to me or talk to somebody, when it comes to that. The professorship thing started, and I said that to say, because of the good guidance that I had in my doctoral program at Howard University, that's how I started teaching before I even graduated. So I started teaching my second year in the doctoral program. And at that time, I was only probably like 2 years older than my oldest student. So, a lot of us in the program, we were like super young, because I went straight through all the way through school. I had 1 semester break, and that was because they didn't accept doctoral students in the spring. It was only in the fall. So I had the spring off, like right after I graduated with my master's. And so I started teaching like the second year in. So I was teaching there, and then I said, well, because at that time, the professoriate was really definitely going to be my path. Initially, I was wanted to do industry. I thought I was going to do something like maybe PR for a record label or whatever. But when I saw what was out there in the job market and the types of things that were there, I was like, I'm sorry, I have a master's degree. I will not. I am going back to school. So that's how I ended up entering the doctoral program. By the way, after the deadline for the applications, because my plan was not to do a doctorate at all. I was just going to come out and work. But when I saw, I was like, oh no, this calls for more schooling. So I went to the director of graduate study and said, I'd like to come into the doctoral program. Please. No, you missed the deadline. But Dr. Stroman, I really, really will work hard. Do you want me to do another project? I would, no. And I begged her to the point she was like, fine, Tachi, I will let you into the program, but I will kick you out if you get anything less than a 3.5. I kept a 4.0 the entire time I was in the doctoral program because I thought, oh, you're not going to kick me out. And I ended up graduating with distinction, meaning when you defend your dissertation above a 97%. So not only did I maintain my grades, but I graduated with distinction. And so I knew this was going to be the path that I took, the professoriate. But then, old voices kept calling me back into production because undergrad, I had done independent video and film production. I did radio. So I did a lot of the practical communication arts. And I had gotten so theoretical after going through a master's and a PhD program that I really felt the need to come back into production. So at the same time, I was in the professor and teaching and doing that for the school I was at the longest. The last school that I was at full time was Nova Southeastern, which is why I moved here to Florida, and I was there for 10 years. And so at the same time, I produced 2 documentaries while I was there. I was doing a lot of that type of thing. But as soon as I left, that's when I got into this format of stuff, because that was the same year that Periscope debuted, the same year that Meerkat debuted. And I knew I wanted to be in on that, not just teaching about it, but actually doing it. So my professorships have been a blend of both theoretical research and practical knowledge. I have always done both at the same time.
Now that is awesome. I hear perseverance. I hear I got to push past, and you push past the no several times.
Yeah.
No might be a complete sentence, but it can be pushed past.
Oh, I'm like, when people say no, I say, oh, you're not talking to me. You couldn't, that must be the other person behind, because you can't be saying no to me, because no for me really just means not now, or this is not my opportunity, but not no to the initial inquiry. Maybe it's not with you, but it's with someone else. So I don't accept no for an answer. Maybe it's just no with you. So bye. You're a non-factor at this point. Let me pursue that someplace else.
So you've gone through graduate school. You are making things happen in the world of live stream at the inception of live stream. Mm-hmm. And what got you into, so your live stream includes, I know, MediaScope and things mm-hmm. of that nature. Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about that composite part of it, because that is, I'm going to say, your beginnings of the claim to fame when you started doing MediaScope. And
yeah. So going back now to 2015, obviously in March of 2015 at South by Southwest, Meerkat debuts. A month later in April, Periscope debuts. And it's a big thing because this is the first time that commercially people can take their phones and make content, go live, do tours, whatever it is you want to do. And people went crazy. People went crazy. They didn't know what to do. And it was so fun, and it was such an awesome time. I went to the first ever Periscope Summit that they did in New York City. So it was in September of 2015. There were a bunch of people that got together and said, we're going to do a Periscope Summit with some of these creators, and they did it. And it was in Harlem, and it was absolutely amazing because I said, I have to be there. But I went there as press. So I also got to cover it for the publication that I wrote for. And I went live on Periscope from the Periscope Summit. So it was actually really very cool. So I started doing it there at the inception. But I did not have my own show yet. By September I did, but when they first debuted, I did not. So I did an awful lot of watching of people who were on there. And what I do, and I always tell people to do, is don't just jump into things. It will be there. If you're supposed to be there, it will be there. Watch and wait and see where there is a dearth or a gap in the space to which you can contribute. What's not being talked about? So there may be 5 million other people talking about media, but what do I have to contribute? And at the time, I didn't even know that I wanted to talk about media. I was sitting here saying, what do I talk about? Okay, well, I love Doctor Who. Maybe I could do something called the Who Report and talk about what's happening. Okay, maybe not. And I went through different iterations of what I wanted to do. But then I said, well, damn it, you teach media. Why don't you just talk about that? And so I was actually volunteering. The Urban League National Conference was being held here in Fort Lauderdale. And so I was volunteering, and I had to go back that evening for one of the events. And right before the event, I said, you know what? I'm just going to go live right now and talk about it. So I did. So July 29, 2015 was the first episode of Mediascope. I had one person that tuned in, and we had a great conversation, and that person has been tuning in ever since then. So so David, if you're watching, what's up? He's like the first Mediascoper ever. And so that's when I started doing it, and I started coming back, and it was a Wednesday. So I said, I don't know if you guys like Wednesdays, but we'll try this and see. Wednesdays at 6:00, because I was thinking news, right? News comes on usually at 6:00. So I'm like, all right, we're going to do Wednesdays at 6. And it's been Wednesdays at 6 ever since. We've evolved to, at first I was using 2 devices. So remember, at the time, we couldn't do stuff like this. You could not use an encoder to go live to several different places. You had one place, and if you wanted to go live to someplace else, you needed to have 2 devices. So I had an iPad and my phone. Meerkat was on one and Periscope was on the other, and I would look back and forth and talk to them. I became an expert in not missing people's questions because I knew they were going to fly. So I was on both, but never did they meet. Then Facebook came up with Facebook Live not too long after. I want to say it was maybe late 2016 that Facebook Live came up. So I started doing Meerkat and Periscope together, and then after I would come back on and do something for Facebook Live. So what was happening is I was doing these broadcasts several times over for the different platforms. Thank God for things like StreamYard and Restream and all these things where you can go live to multiple places at the same time. So that's basically, how I got into it, how I started doing Mediascope. Mediascope, we're now in our 9th season. Wednesday was the first episode of the 9th season, and it's going strong. So I've added not just talking about the news, but I have guests now periodically. There are more bells and whistles. I can put up pictures, and that's Mediascope.
All right. So tell us about Be More. Where did that come from, and how did that come about?
During Mediascope, everything is a reinvention or gets jumped off from someplace else. So I was this was during the pandemic. So during the pandemic, I said on Mediascope, one of the episodes, with all of the free and low cost training, because during the pandemic, everybody had a workshop that they were off. If you didn't come out more engaged, if you didn't come out more intelligent, something was wrong with you. So I said, with all of this free learning that is out here, you better come out wiser, smarter, wealthier, better. Damn it, just be more encompassing all of the more thans. So that's where that came from. And I said, all right, I'm going to do something with that. And yeah, that's how Be More got born from wanting to level up or be better in whatever it is you do. But in my case, I talk about video and live stream.
Yeah, I was fortunate to be in on one of your classes about the three sisters.
Yes.
Yeah, that was good. So I strongly suggest that when Dr. Tachi puts out a training session, you all tune in and get some knowledge, because it was really, really good. It was well presented, and we got PDFs and things, and we now have no excuses for not having a well-lit production. So thank you very much for that. Now that brings us forward. What are you doing? I'm going to talk about IndieSoup. I am going to get there, but you're doing something else now with another person on Wednesdays.
Yeah, am I doing something with another person? Oh, yes, I am. Ha ha! That shows you I do so much stuff I forget. So yes, every Wednesday, I am actually the pop culture correspondent for The Kenny Burns Show. And The Kenny Burns Show, if you're not familiar, he is a really big, initially started off in the music industry. Now he has his own radio show and platform out of Atlanta. So I am one of The Kenny Burns Show's correspondents, pop culture. And so I do a segment called Pop Gumbo that gets posted every Wednesday, usually like sometime in the afternoon.
Pop Gumbo. Okay, y'all know, go look for it. All right, so now we're here with IndieSoup Media. What made you want to do a network, not just a programming or a show, but now we're talking about an entire network?
Because of people like you and Francine, because there are other creators that I know that are like me, that are making content. I wouldn't call it spinning wheels, because we are getting somewhere, but we're making content in silos on our own. And it just occurred to me that, and in fact, the funny thing is, I don't know if you remember, but a while back, we all had a conversation after, Tech Divas, about putting together some type of big schedule of all of us that were content creators, so that we would all know where we are at any time. I remember that. So this is in a way an offshoot of that type of idea, because I said, well, rather than all of us actually being solo actors on our own, why don't we collaborate and come together under one umbrella, so that there's strength in numbers, right? So I thought it made more sense to create a platform where creators could come that is curated. So obviously I love YouTube, but YouTube is a hodgepodge of everything. This is specific and this is curated. So even though we have a lot of different types of programming, it's curated programming. So that's what led me to do IndieSoup. The fact that there are creators like yourself and other great creators out there that don't have a larger platform where we can get attention. And so you're left to do it on your own, but now you have the benefit of other creators to help with that.
Nice. What was your biggest challenge that you faced when starting IndieSoup?
The biggest challenge? Technology. Simply because you want something to do something doesn't mean it will do the something you want it to do. And I always jokingly say this to folks. I was like, look, the first week was about to be the last week. I was about to tell all of you, take your shows and get out, because I am tired. Because that first week was, especially the first 2 days, was really hellish. There were some tech issues that were happening within the app, and not the app, but the platform, and that controlled everything. That controlled going out to social media, that was for the website, that was for the Roku app, so it was everything. So if something went wrong with that affected everything. So I don't ever like to have all my eggs in one basket. So within the first 2 days, I figured out how I could push the stuff out to social without having an issue. And that's what I did. And so since then, it's been smooth. I think the other biggest thing is really starting to get help. This is something that is a large undertaking and very difficult to do alone, because something will inevitably not happen because I'm working in the business as opposed to on it. So thank goodness there have been some people that have stepped up. Like, for example, TJ does our website. So the front facing website, she has been instrumental in that. I'm now getting some help from social media, or with social media, from one of our creators, Chris Edwards, who does Take Two and Safe Space. So he does social media, so he's going to be helping with that. Dr. Vibe has been instrumental because he has been helping gather interns. And so whenever he's in Canada, and they have great internship programs there at their universities. And so whenever he goes up, he's also going up for IndieSoup to get interns. So I've had a lot of help, which is so needed, and I'm so thankful for. But those are the things, having enough help to do something like this, because you will get burned out. I was already burnt out the first week because of all that this required. And I'm like, yeah, if this is going to continue, it cannot just be me. And so thank goodness that's happened. And then the technology, to me, the bigger part is the technology working well, because technology working well determines who's going to want to advertise on your platform, whatever platform it is. Nobody wants to advertise if there are constantly bugs, or nobody's going to see the advertisement. So that's a hindrance, definitely, or was a hindrance.
Okay. And as you always talk about, we need to be ready for whatever may be coming down the pike and have a backup plan in place. So to the creators that are out here listening, what is a piece of advice that you would give to them?
Well, several pieces of advice. Start where you are. I always say this because I think people who are just new to creating or want to get started with creating don't, because they think they don't have this camera, this microphone, this set of lights. That's fine. Your audience will appreciate your transparency and that you are willing to evolve for them. So start where you are, and then respect your audience enough to get better. Definitely have a plan B, C, D, E, F, all the way down the alphabet, because technology can and will fail you. So be prepared for, what am I going to do, down to, all right, sometimes if you're going live, sometimes for some of your guests, it may not work. I've had this where I worked with a client before where she was in a law office, and for some reason she could not connect to StreamYard. It kept freezing up, but Zoom worked. So I said, you know what we're going to do? We're just going to record this and play it back afterwards. So that's what we ended up doing. So you need to have more than one plan for what you want to do. And you know what? Enjoy it. It is so much fun to make content. It should be at some point profitable for you, but it cannot be only about profit, or you won't do it. You have to love it.
Oh, you have to love it.
Yeah. Or
you won't do it.
Absolutely.
And we can tell that you do love it because you put so much into it. And I've been looking at some of the creators that are on there. Tell us a little bit about the different ones that are there. I saw which one that I was like, this is really well done. I think it was the show with the family, and
313 versus everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of fun stuff on there.
There is. So I'll start with 313 versus Everybody, which we play 2 days a week. Yesterday and then Thursdays and then Fridays we play them, and they're part of our like Friday lineup as well, which is a lot of fun. So 313 versus Everybody is about a group of friends. You know, there's some couples in there. There's family members as well that they travel from Detroit, the 313, and they traveled around. They have a good time together. There are some rough times. But the thing that got me, and I'll talk about one particular episode that happened 2 weeks ago. They were in Atlanta, and they had different conversations. And one was with the group of men that had gone. And the youngest of the group is Justin, who's 29, was talking about the struggles that he had since he lost his grandmother, and the fact that he was in therapy, and the fact that he was just so transparent, to the point that one of the other cast members, a cousin, he started tearing up and he was crying. And I love to see that, because it teaches particularly Black men that it is okay to be transparent and to talk about these things, because if you don't let these things out, either through group therapy and therapy, they manifest in other destructive ways. So I thought it was so important to see that. And I love 313 versus Everybody. This is their first time doing anything like this, and they put a lot into that production. We have your show, as I mentioned before, starting out, and TJ's show, Ask TJ About Marketing. That comes on Mondays, and Mondays is our slate where we talk about we talk about business and inspiration. So there are a lot of great shows. Mediascope is on there, of course. Be More is on there, and also Pop Gumbo is on there. If you have a platform, put yourself on your platform. That's what it's there for. But we have shows about fashion. We have shows that are inspirational. We have shows that are about uncovering different things. So Take Two, and more so Safe Space, where Chris Edwards talks to members of the LGBTQIA plus community that are also Caribbean. And you know, that's a big thing in Caribbean communities. And they're just talking about their stories of being in that community as a Caribbean person. So there are so many great shows. I can't even mention them all, and there are more to come. But that's what we have for you on IndieSoup. Join us.
All right. So where can we find IndieSoup Media?
You can watch IndieSoup Media on the Roku app. If you go to the Roku app store, just download IndieSoup Media, the app. You can watch on IndieSoupMedia.tv. You can watch on YouTube, Facebook. You can also watch on Twitch and X. So they're all there, and we'll be on more soon. The broadcast day starts at 4 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and then at 6 p.m. on Fridays.
Right. Dr. Tachi, thank you so much. I'm going to ask you 2 questions, and we will be out. So Absolutely. What is your favorite charity or cause?
Oh my goodness. So there are a lot, but I really, really love Smile Train. I have a cousin who works for Smile Train, and they actually work with providing free surgeries for children that are born with like cleft lips and cleft palates. So she works with them, and that's one of my favorites. And then also Mercy Ships, which does free surgeries as well. They have a big, basically like cruise ship that they turn into a floating hospital, and they'll dock in different places like in Africa, etc. And they'll do these free like surgeries. Like if somebody has bow legs, they'll do that. I think they also do cleft lip and cleft palate surgery. So those are 2 of my favorite charities that I like.
Okay, and my final question, what's one thing in your purse or briefcase that you cannot do without?
Oh gosh. Now that's a terrible question, because if it's in there, it means I need it. But hand sanitizer in this day and age, hand sanitizer.
Okay. That's really good. Thank you so much for taking your time today to tell us a little bit about who you are, how you started out, and where you are now. We're looking forward to doing another interview down the line a little bit, but today we want to say thank you so much, and we will thank you all for watching us today and checking out IndieSoup Media. Make sure that you follow IndieSoup Media wherever you get your programming. And we want to say thank you again for being with Starting Out. We'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.